I'm David Scandura,
I'm Justus Burkett.
and today we're here to find out if The Great Muppet Caper is the greatest movie ever made.
Yes, you are! You know what? You can't even sing! Your voice was dumb!
Sorry, I've been real weird lately with the intros.
That's fine. I think it keeps things fresh. Keeps me on my toes. I can't get too complacent.
Again, I don't think about it. It's
Yeah.
just you just turn on the mic and I start going. That's how we ended up with Watto.
That's improv, baby. This is not an improv podcast. We're not classified as comedy on the podcast providers.
Yeah.
We're film reviews because I was like, comedy seems like we're tooting our own horn a little bit. I don't think we're that funny.
No, I think we're quite funny.
So yeah, sometimes I think we're funny. Mostly I laugh incessantly at my own jokes, which I'm very aware of when I edit the podcast.
Sure, I do too.
And I'm like, this guy needs to shut the fuck up.
I say things not because I think they'll be funny to other people, but because they will be amusing and funny to me.
Yes. Yeah. Prepare for a lot of me laughing at my own jokes on this episode because I was laughing a lot during this movie. And there's a lot that I found funny that I want to talk about.
Before we get to the movie, how are things, you know?
Things are good. Did you introduce the show?
How you doing? It's the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Woman!
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining, compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world. I'm David Scandura, joined as always by my co-host and guy in a Muppet costume jumping from a London double-decker bus.
Guy in a Muppet costume riding a motorcycle.
Justus Burkett. Those fucking Muppet costumes can burn in hell.
They're
They're
funny, though.
horrifying.
It's so funny when the character is a Muppet, and then in the next shot, it's clearly just a fully adult man dressed as Miss Piggy. It's so fucking funny. But yeah, a little unsettling. You asked how I was.
Yeah.
Before I reminded you that we needed to introduce the show. In case anyone's first episode is The Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah, maybe you should introduce the show from now on. It seems like you've got it on handle. You keep me.
I don't want that responsibility.
You keep me in check because I keep fucking things up.
I just won't remind you next time. It's fine. Maybe I won't notice next time. Maybe we should just scrap the intro altogether and go a little high concept with this, where we just never acknowledge that we're doing a podcast at all. People just drop in and it's just like, oh, they're in the middle of a conversation. They're not even acknowledging that they're being recorded. I'm doing good. We finally got some fucking snow on this damn ass mountain, which is nice because we have had like none of that all winter, and now there's like a foot of snow on the ground, which is rad.
Yeah,
so I'm happy about that. I don't know. Things have been going good. Installing flooring at the new theater, which is a little bit of a headache, but having fun with that. Doing good, feeling good. I don't really have any. I didn't come with any media recommendations planned, so I will not say any. David, how are you?
I'm good. Also enjoying the snow. I did walk in it yesterday. I had to walk from the mechanic and then to the mechanic to pick my car up.
Yeah.
Which is not the worst thing in the world because the mechanic's relatively close. It just, all the snow on the ground made the walk like twice as long as it normally is.
Yeah. Are there even sidewalks in your neighborhood?
Yeah, there are.
Okay, but they weren't like cleared.
No, I mean, and I was also walking on 66 for part of that, and not all of that was cleared yet. So, you know, but I'm trying to walk more anyway.
Yeah, we all should be.
So I can't really complain all that much. It was just one of those where I got home. At the end of the day, after walking for an hour and a half total in the snow, I was like, I need a shower.
Yeah.
and I need to relax. I got myself some breakfast in the morning as a little treat, which is delicious.
Yeah.
And drank 2 cups of coffee, which I don't normally drink coffee. And then on the walk home periodically, I had to like stop and throw up a little bit.
Oh, okay. From the coffee?
Yeah, it just upset my stomach a bit.
Yeah, it will do that. Yeah. 2 cups of coffee is normally what I start my day with. That's just so that I get all of the shit that has accumulated in me out. I drink 2 cups of coffee and take 3 shits. Yeah.
We don't have to keep talking about bodily fluids. This isn't the type of movie to do that on.
No, this is another family film.
Yeah. Media recommendations. The new Swan song by the band Swans. I Am the Tower. I Am a Tower.
Yeah.
It's 19 minutes long and it's fucking great.
It is good. I've only listened to it the once so far.
Yeah.
But it is great.
And I like that the lyrics seem like they have a little bit more focus on the environment a little bit.
Yeah.
His lyrics are often very abstract and stuff like that, but and open to interpretation, but it seems like he's touching on some environmental themes on the new song a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's just cool that it's like the first half of it is builds and has that improvisational feel that like a lot of their music does when we saw them live. And then the second half is just like, yeah, we're just going to do Heroes by David Bowie now.
Yep.
And I think that's intentional.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a very, very intentional choice that they made. But that's my recommendation. If you got 19 minutes, listen to the new Swans song. Now we're going to talk about The Great Muppet Caper.
The Great Muppet Caper.
Directed by the one and only Jim Henson.
Yes.
His directorial debut.
Yes, and one of his few feature film directorial credits. The man is obviously heavily involved in all of the Muppet films that came out prior to his untimely death. But him and Frank Oz sort of alternated directorial duties. So like Muppets Take Manhattan, which comes out after this, was directed by Frank Oz. And then the Muppet movie was directed by somebody else, right? So Jim Henson, the creative force behind the Muppets, him and Frank Oz, but by many accounts, Jim Henson was really the mastermind behind the Muppets, right? But not behind the camera as director all that often. It was basically, I think, this and The Dark Crystal, and that's more or less it.
He also did Labyrinth.
Labyrinth, that's what it is.
Both of which I've seen.
Yeah. He directed Labyrinth? That wasn't Frank Oz? I believe you. It's just, I'm surprised to hear that.
I checked and it said Jim Henson, which
right.
I was surprised about. I didn't remember that.
Right. I didn't remember that either. You've seen The Dark Crystal, right?
Yeah. I've seen Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. Labyrinth sort of, I didn't grow up with either of them, so both of them sort of faded into the bucket of like 90s fantasy kid power nostalgia.
Right.
In the vein of like The Neverending Story.
Totally. Yeah.
Where I'm like, this is fine, just not for me.
All that stuff that came out in the like mid 80s that like 90s kids were just raised on because it was what was on VHS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which seems unfair because I know the Dark Crystal in particular is just like as technically impressive as any of the Muppets movies are.
Yeah.
But I think whenever I watched it, I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. So I should probably rewatch both of those.
I'm gonna go ahead and just say on the record, because The Dark Crystal is one that I've had pinned for the show for a while. Eventually, we'll probably do The Dark Crystal. I don't know if we'll do a Labyrinth episode, but we will. If I have my way, almost definitely do a Dark Crystal episode at some point, because that movie is wild.
Yeah,
but yeah.
This I realized this. This is our second time doing a Muppets movie immediately following a David Lynch movie.
I'm so glad you realized that because I also realized that, and that is hilarious.
So here I have 2 questions for you. One, do we do this every time?
I think we might have to.
I think so.
I think we might have to do, because I said one Muppet movie per year. I think we might also have to do one Lynch movie per year. And always just do them back to back. Like, we always have to do a Lynch movie followed by a Muppet film.
Cool, it's decided.
Until we run out of one or the other or both. and then or the podcast ends.
Yeah. All right, I'll get the contract written up and we can sign it in our blood.
Perfect.
My second question: which David Lynch movie would you recast with Muppets and one human?
Really excellent question. Very, very good question. Okay. My first impulse was to say do Mulholland Drive with all Muppets except Naomi Watts, which I do think is still a good one, but the more I think about the question, the more I'm kind of drawn to the idea of Blue Velvet, keep Dennis Hopper.
Exactly. That's exactly the correct answer. You have Miss Piggy. Miss Piggy is Isabella Rossellini.
And Kermit as Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah. Why are there people like Frank?
I'm just imagining,
And then Miss Piggy.
just
I'll
imagining,
sing Blue Velvet for you, Frank.
I'm just imagining Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy and a bunch of those like weird little freak Muppets, like maybe some of the members of Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, or maybe some of those jug band guys.
Yeah.
All in like the weird house that they go to with Frank Booth on his night from hell, and all these Muppets standing around him and him being like, "I'll fuck anything that moves." all these Muppets just staring at him in horror.
just one Dennis Hopper grabbing Kermit by the scruff of his neck and screaming in his face. Heineken!
What kind of beer do you like? Heineken.
I think Gonzo the Great would be Ben. Sings Roy Orbison.
Yes.
Just like
crying. Oh wow. Man, I'm just thinking about other David Lynch movies that you could put Muppets into. I mean, obviously Inland Empire with all Muppets and then just Laura Dern would be awesome.
Well, then you use the freak Muppets like the
Right.
Dr. Teeth is like the Polish guys.
Yes. Yeah, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem are all those Polish dudes. Maybe I feel like Gonzo the Great is the Justin Theroux character, probably. Oh, wow. What a wonderful thought exercise.
Yep.
I honestly think in any Dennis Hopper movie, you could just replace everybody else with Muppets and keep Dennis Hopper, and it would work perfectly, because Dennis Hopper kind of was a Muppet. Like, just as a guy, he just had Muppet energy. Yeah. Anyway, the Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah.
David, so we've talked about this a little bit off mic, but I don't quite remember. We might have even talked about this on our Muppet Christmas Carol episode, but refresh my memory. What Muppet movies have you seen? Not counting the Great Muppet Caper, which I believe you watched for the first time for this episode.
This is my first time.
Okay.
This is possibly my first time with any Jim Henson helmed Muppet project.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember watching The Muppet Show as a kid.
Right.
I hadn't seen any of the films other than Christmas Carol, Treasure Island, which both were on regular rotation in my house.
Mm.
And then we went to the theater as a family to see Muppets from Space.
Yeah.
But I have basically no memory of that other than Gonzo's an Alien, actually.
Which tracks.
So I think this is my first experience with anything that was made while Jim Henson was alive.
Wow.
Which is wild.
That is crazy. That's especially crazy for me, because I know I talked about this on the Muppet Christmas Carol episode, but I was raised in a Muppet household. I think I told this anecdote on the previous episode, but my mother, when she was in the hospital giving birth to my older brother, cried because she got the news in the hospital that Jim Henson had died, and she was sad she was bringing children into a world without Jim Henson. So that just tells you my mother's relationship with the Muppets. It was very strong. And so, like, both of my parents love the Muppets, and I was raised on the Muppet Show. I've seen, I think, every episode of the Muppet Show, and I have seen almost every Muppet movie. most of them many times. Like this movie that we're talking about today, as a kid, I probably watched this like at least a dozen times. It was on, all the Muppet stuff was on heavy rotation.
Yeah.
When I was a kid. So yeah, so very interesting to me that this is your first exposure to like Jim Henson era Muppets. And I we'll get into it, but I really hope you had a good time with it, because this era of the Muppets where Jim Henson is at the helm, especially the early movies when they had like just broken into feature films, the first few movies, I feel like there's special energy that you don't necessarily get from the later stuff.
Yeah, and my memory of Treasure Island is spotty, so we'll have to do that at some point so I can come back to it.
Yeah.
But, you know, Christmas Carol's relatively fresh in my mind because we did it on the show a couple years ago. I remember you talking about how the Muppets are sort of kind of chaotic and anarchic.
Yes.
I feel that more in this than I do with Christmas Carol. Like, Christmas Carol, of course, has the Dickens narrative that it's sort of tied to.
Right.
But it is definitely going for more of like a family-oriented tone. Whereas here, I mean, it's like, you can still show it to kids, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more slapstick. It's a lot more loose in terms of plot, and things can go in strange directions.
Yes. And there's tons of jokes in this movie that I think do go over the heads of kids, and not necessarily like ribald jokes. Like not too much of it is humor that is inappropriate for children. Just some of the jokes I feel like are delivered too deadpan, or like are a little too clever for like a kid to pick up on it. Like, as I was watching this, I was like, I don't think I ever realized watching this as a kid that like this scene where fucking Lady Holiday is like talking shit to all of her models is like packed wall to wall with one-liners, because they were just like zooming over my head as a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Or even like the fashion show when Statler and Waldorf are like, oh, the bikinis are coming out. Let's better synchronize our pacemakers.
I love that joke.
I was like, I don't know that we would get that joke in a Brian Henson world.
Yeah. This is the thing, right? Is that there is something sort of boundary pushing about the Henson era of the Muppets. You get that even more on the Muppet Show. The Muppet Show really was a TV show for grown-ups that just had puppets as the main characters. Like, and again, it's not like inappropriate for children. It's just funnier as an adult. And I feel that way about a lot of these early movies too.
Well, it's a similar way to like original Looney Tunes cartoons.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Great Muppet Caper. Incredible production logos on this thing. Yeah. You have the one with the Henson Studios one with Kermit in the director's chair. And then I fucking love the one where it's like Animal as the MGM lion. This is not an MGM picture. The production logo is something else.
Yeah, they're just lampooning the MGM logo.
And it's Hannibal as the MGM lion roaring and then eating the like frame around him is just and then just immediately we're breaking the fourth wall, which I know they do some in Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island. They don't do it as much in the later movies as they do early. Like, in this movie is full of fourth wall breaks.
Well, it seems like everyone in this movie is aware that they're in a Muppet movie.
Yes.
Human characters included.
Yes.
And
completely.
that's not the case in Christmas Carol. Like, Christmas Carol is full of actors, no small part, including like Michael Caine, treating this thing like a BBC special, and sticking very true to the tone of Dickens. And then there just happens to be a world populated with Muppets.
Yes.
That, like Gonzo and Rizzo can break the fourth wall in character as Dickens.
Whereas this movie literally starts with them commentating on the fact that the movie is starting. They're basically like, well, we're here making a movie. Here's the opening credits. And they're in a hot air balloon. I love in this opening credits bit where Gonzo the Great is barely resisting the call of the void.
Yeah, I was like, something's up with Gonzo, man. Where he's like, I wonder how far you could plummet until you blacked out. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because they're in the hot air balloon, and he's like, I would love to do this without the balloon. And Kermit goes, you mean plummeting? And he's like, yeah. Gonzo just like really wishing to fall to his death. And I also love them commentating on the opening credits as they're happening, being like, oh, what does like BSC mean or whatever, like the acronym at the end of somebody's producer credit or whatever. And then them also being like, who reads these anyway? And Kermit, it's funny because it's when directed by Jim Henson is on the screen, and Kermit, voiced by Jim Henson, is like, oh yeah, people care that all these people have families. It's just it's really good meta shit, you know, which I think is like a thing that I think a thing that this movie kind of does a magic trick with is packing it full of like meta shit and fourth wall breaks in a way that like isn't annoying or winky. It is winky, but it doesn't feel like obnoxious in the same way that like a fourth wall break in like a Deadpool movie sometimes feels.
It's not Deadpool turning to the camera. It's like an offhand comment where I think Diana Rigg is like, well, it's the exposition and we have to get through it at some point.
Yes.
Or John Cleese is like, oh, there's a pig climbing the building.
My favorite one of those is when Miss Piggy steals the truck and then the truck runs out of gas. And then the motorcycle flies out of the back of another truck and just like neatly rolls up to her with the helmet and the gloves already on it. And she just turns to the camera and goes, what a coincidence.
Yeah. And the Muppets can break the fourth wall and turn directly to the camera.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not done in a way that's as winky as it could be, I
yeah.
think.
That's the thing that I think works is it works because they're the Muppets, you know? It's like less charming when it's Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool than it is when it's like somebody's hand inside Kermit the Frog. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So they land in looks like New York City. The thing that struck me immediately with this movie is the amount of human actors on screen in comparison to A Muppet Christmas Carol, which is mostly Muppets with a few humans sprinkled in.
Yes.
And the Muppets landing in the middle of New York City seems to disrupt everything. Disrupt traffic.
It causes full-blown pandemonium in the best way. I love this opening number, the Hey a Movie number, right? I love that there's like a guy on one of those like lift things that you use to like wash windows on high-rise buildings, who is like by the end of the number like dangling off of it, like at risk of falling and dying. And then Sweetums falls into a manhole and a bunch of dynamite gets thrown down the manhole and explodes. It's just like it's the wonderful anarchy of the Muppets, where it's like they are nothing but warm and positive and delightful, and in their wake there's just like destruction and chaos. You know? That's what I love about the Muppets.
So this made me think that like Muppet Christmas Carol is a prequel film where human and Muppet lived in harmony. And then at some point the Great Divide happened.
The Great Muppet Wars.
And now like Muppets are like second-class citizens. And like, does Muppet racism exist? Like, as a New York taxi cab driver with these fucking Muppets like landing in the middle of his route, interrupting his morning job, being like,
Muppets.
Like, is he dropping like a hard M or something?
Maybe. I mean, later on in the movie, Diana Rigg is a little racist to Miss Piggy when she's like, oh, like that's what I get for hiring a pig or whatever. The reporter asks her, like, will you hire a pig again?
Yeah.
And she's like, I'll seriously have to consider it, right? Like, so I don't know, maybe there is Muppet racism. I kind of feel like in Muppets from Space, Gonzo sort of experiences some Muppet racism. I kind of feel like that's a large part of the plot of that, like his arc in that movie is he feels discriminated against and left out of society. Yeah. Good opening number. Hey, a movie. I like your headcanon about the... on the special features of the Pixar film Monsters, Inc.,
Mhm.
there is a similar backstory for the relationship between monsters and humans. If you watch the special features of...
Really?
Yes. There is, in the special features of Monsters, Inc., there's like a short that's like storyboards only. Where they talk about how, like, in time immemorial, there were two races who lived alongside each other, the Mans and the Mons. And then eventually they, like, went to war with each other, and, like, the Mans overpowered the Mons, and the Mons had to go live in their, like, pocket dimension or whatever. And it, like, fully explains the world setup of Monsters Incorporated. Where it's like the monsters had to flee this dimension at risk of being genocided by humanity. It's pretty wild.
I would watch The Great Muppet War, though.
Yeah.
It's like at the end of the movie, and the humans are closing in on Kermit's squad, and he just has to turn to all of them.
Yeah. New Zealand has to throw his last fish to save everybody.
Gentlemen, it's been an honor serving with you. Like sad violin music plays.
I'll see you in hell. Yeah. Hey, a movie starring everybody and me. My main complaint with this movie, not enough Sweetums. He's only in this opening number. You know which Muppet Sweetums?
Which Muppet is Sweetums?
He's the big guy. He's
Okay.
the one who's a man in a suit with the huge head.
Okay.
And he's when they're singing the Hey a Movie song, he's the one that goes, "Is there any way to stop it?" Which I really like.
He climbs up out of the manhole cover.
Yes, yeah, he's in the manhole. Yeah. Not enough Sweetums. Wish there was more Sweetums in this movie.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this movie is that I associate the Muppets with Christmas Carol.
Right.
So I'm familiar with some of them from Christmas Carol and the role that they play in that film. And then seeing, like, other ones brought to the forefront more, like there's less Gonzo in this one.
Yeah.
But we have more Fozzie Bear. Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem have a full-blown arc in this film.
Yeah, they do.
In comparison to Christmas Carol, where they're in one scene.
Right. Yeah, I like how they kind of rotate out which Muppet characters have the spotlight, to your point. Like, Kermit and Piggy are always the central ones, like the major ones. But yeah, the supporting characters do kind of get swapped out sometimes. And in this early phase, where Jim Henson was still alive, you get a lot more Fozzie and a lot less Rizzo the Rat. Rizzo the Rat really doesn't come to the forefront until the post-Henson era.
Okay.
He was like kind of a really minor character on the Muppet Show. I don't even think he was on the Muppet Show until like a few seasons in. And he was always like really minor. And you don't really get like Rizzo the Rat as like one of the major Muppets until like Christmas Carol, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you get more Gonzo in those later like post-Henson movies too. But like in the early ones, it's very much like Fozzie Bear is like the second lead next to Kermit, right?
And I recognize Sweetums. I don't think he's in Christmas Carol. He must be in Treasure Island, and that's where I recognize him from.
He's in Treasure Island.
Because I definitely recognized him when he showed up, but I just didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize Beauregard at all. And I thought
Beauregard, the cab driver?
Yeah, and I thought he may have been like an original Muppet for this movie.
He's on the Muppet Show.
But he's on the show, yeah.
Yeah. I think he's also in the first Muppet movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man, I love Beauregard. I love all these guys. And you get to see a lot of them like throughout the movie, mostly at the Happiness Hotel, which, to your point, is populated entirely by Muppets. So maybe this is a segregated society. This is a Muppets only hotel.
It's the Muppet Ghetto, the Muppet Projects.
Yeah. Yeah, so they explain to you what the movie's going to be about in the opening number, which is Kermit and Fozzie are identical twin brothers.
It's so fucking funny.
I'm really glad that you immediately said that bit was funny, because one of my questions in my notes to you was, is that joke funny? That everyone keeps getting Fozzie and Kermit mixed up.
And the only way, and Fozzie keeps getting them mixed up, and the only way that anyone can tell them apart is when Fozzie has his hat on. Very, very good and funny.
One of my favorite jokes in this entire movie is when Kermit's sitting like sadly on the park bench after he finds out that Miss Piggy lied to him about being like a rich fashion designer, and this father and daughter are walking by, and the daughter says, "Look, Dad, it's a bear." And the dad goes, "No, Christine, that's a frog. Bears wear hats." It's just fucking, it really sent me. It's such a good fucking joke. Because at that point, they've been building up the bit for like an hour by the time you get that one. And it really, really fucking sent me. They're reporters at a newspaper. Gonzo is their photographer. And Jack Warden is their editor, their angry editor, and I love this scene with Jack Warden yelling at these Muppets. Them asking for a raise and him being like, "I'll give you a raise," and pounding the desk is just so good. I love Jack Warden in this scene. I wish he was in more of the movie.
Yeah. A lot of cameos in this movie that are intentionally like played as cameos from veteran actors of both the American and British varieties.
Yes.
A lot of whom I don't recognize, but then occasionally someone will pop up who I do recognize, and I'm like, "Oh, you're here?"
We're gonna get to those. Yeah. Jack Warden, one of the 12 angry men.
Okay.
Yeah, one of those 12 jurors. Prestigious career in Hollywood, and here he is dressing down Kermit the Frog. You've never seen the Muppet movie 1979, which makes me realize you probably don't know about the cameos in that movie.
No, I don't know anything about the other Muppet movies.
It's going to be a real delight when we eventually get to the Muppet movie 1979, because you think this movie has cameos. Like literally every scene of the Muppet movie, you're like, "What the? He's here? Richard Pryor is in this movie?" That's not even the craziest one. Yeah. So during the opening number, Diana Riggs' jewels get stolen.
Yes.
Right. And this is a setup for the plot, the loose plot of this movie, which, like as you mentioned, this, like many of the Henson era Muppet movies, is light on plot, heavy on bits. So the plot is basically someone is stealing jewels from this rich fashion designer lady. And they are initially, Kermit and Fozzie and Gonzo are initially going to go to England to interview her about this. And they get caught up in some of the jewel heist antics, right? So they go to Britain. I love the scene with them on the plane, and they're in the cargo hold in the crates, and
because they don't have rights.
right. No Muppets in coach. Your ass is going in the cargo hold.
Muppet civil rights haven't happened yet.
Yeah. They also don't have any money, to be fair.
That's true.
So maybe it's more of a financial, but as we know from real life cases of inequality, often not having any money is the result of discrimination and not the other way around. Right. So,
right.
And
more importantly, this guy throws them out of the plane, which
it's so
seems
funny.
like a hate crime.
But it's also very funny.
It's very funny. Yeah.
I love the crates that they're in the cargo hold, where Kermit's is labeled frog, Fozzie's is labeled bear, and Gonzo's is labeled whatever. Yeah, and then they toss the guy's like all out for England, and Kermit's like, "Oh, is the plane landing?" And he goes, "No, the plane lands in Italy. You land in England." Just throws him out. Yeah. So then they are in England.
Yeah. They land in a small pond, and they talk to this kindly British gentleman.
I love that he has a travel guide that he pulls out of his pocket when they're asking him for recommendations on where to get a hotel room, and they say that their price range is free. And and then he just, in his travel book, he's like, oh, well, then there's bus terminals, riverbanks, the Happiness Hotel. Good bit. And I like Kermit being like, oh, the Happiness Hotel, that sounds great, we'll do that. And Gonzo being like, what's wrong with bus terminals?
I like, he's like, welcome to Great Britain. And Fosse's like, oh, Great Britain, we meant to land in England.
We'll never get to England now.
We'll never get to England, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot more Muppets in actual locations as opposed to Christmas Carol, which is just a bunch of sets.
Yes.
And the like wide shots of the Muppets poking out of these boxes, talking to this English guy sitting on the shore was like blowing my fucking mind.
That is the thing with these early Henson era movies, because like once we start getting into the post Jim Henson Muppet movies, they, to your point, they start designing the sets, the locations around the fact that mostly what needs to happen is puppetry, right? Which makes the puppetry look all the more seamless. You don't get the moments in those later movies where you're like, well, that's a guy in a Miss Piggy suit, like you do in this movie.
Yeah.
But it also, in my opinion, reduces some of that magic that you're talking about. The Jim Henson magic that you kind of only got in the Muppet stuff from when he was alive is, how the fuck are they doing this? And the big one that I want to talk about is the bikes.
Yeah,
but
obviously.
we'll get there.
Obviously.
Yeah, but even this in the pond, I totally agree. It's like, it is magic. Like, you mean to tell me that Kermit the Frog is not a real guy? How the fuck is he not a real guy? I'm seeing him, he's sitting in a crate floating on water. There's no puppeteer in there. What are you talking about? That's a guy. You know? Yeah, it's I think this movie does a really good job of showcasing how great this team was. Frank Oz, Jim Henson, Steve Whitmire is here as well. All of that like OG crew, right? They were so fucking good at making you fully believe that these characters are just moving around our world, which I think later on it's like, okay, now we're seeing these Muppets in a world that was constructed for the Muppets.
Yeah, and I do think that obviously the Brian Henson stuff is still extremely impressive.
Totally.
And those moments where you see like Kermit and Robin the Frog singing, in like Muppet Christmas Carol from, and you see the whole body. Those are still really mind-blowing and impressive. With here, it's so strange to me seeing the Muppets in our world instead of like entering a world of Muppets.
Yeah.
With like in Christmas Carol, which again, because it was in the before times when they lived in peace before the war happened.
And then eventually the Muppets had to just go off like the Mons in Monsters Inc. They had to go off into their own pocket dimension, into which they occasionally suck Michael Caine. And a selection of other Tim Curry gets transported to the Muppet dimension to make a movie with them. Yeah. So they go to the Happiness Hotel on this guy's recommendation. And boy, oh boy, do I love this sequence. Because that's basically that's the next thing that happens, right?
Yeah, the Happiness Hotel is probably the best stuff in the movie.
I think it's the best musical number for sure.
Oh, I think the song is the best number. But a lot of the jokes and the bits in the Happiness Hotel are really, really well done and very impressive to me.
I love the Happiness Hotel. I love the bit where they're talking to the guy running the front desk. And they're like, how do we pay? And he says, A, credit card, B, cash, C, sneak out in the middle of the night. And they say, we'll take C. And he goes, very popular choice. Yeah. Yeah, all the homies are here. The Jug Band's here. Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem are here. And they sing a song about the Happiness Hotel.
There's a cat Muppet with an eye patch that looks really sad and fucked up.
Okay, yeah. Also, the Happiness Hotel number really, really good part of this movie for weird little freak Muppets. As we established on our Muppet Christmas Carol episode, I love Muppets that look like fucked up weird little guys. Crazy Harry is one of those. He's the guy. His skin is like gray and his hair is black and he has like insane huge wide eyes. He pops up a couple times in this movie. I also like the guy from the Jug Band who just has an enormous mane of red hair and then like a leather strap around one of his wrists and he's playing the banjo. Love that guy. Love Floyd Pepper from the Electric Mayhem, who has cavities where eyes should be and no eyeballs. Floyd Pepper's my man.
And I was surprised that some of those one-off, like, or what I would consider to be like one-off Muppets that show up for a joke and then we move on, like the Swedish Chef, for instance. He goes on the caper. He's like. He's part of the team at the end of the movie.
Yeah. Oh God, I love the Swedish Chef.
Oh, and great Sam the Eagle appearance after the number's over, where he opens the door and goes, "You're all weirdos," and slams the door.
Yeah. Primo Sam the Eagle shit. The gag with the Murphy bed is really funny to me because we're at the Happiness Hotel, so I'm just thinking about Happiness Hotel shit where the Murphy bed keeps folding into the wall while they're on it.
Well, and light bulbs keep falling out.
It's a very funny gag.
Yeah,
the light bulb falling out is a very funny recurring gag. Yeah, they like they all go to bed in one bed together, Gonzo, Fozzie, and Kermit. And then the Murphy bed folds them into the wall, and Kermit goes, "Can someone turn out the lights?" And the light bulb just falls out of the fixture, and he goes, "Thank you." He goes to interview Lady Holiday. Lady Holiday is talking mad shit to all of her models about the clothes that she dressed them in.
Yeah, it's like she did make those. She did make those clothes.
Yeah. And she's like, "What? You look fucking disgusting. Get this shit out of my face." And it's like, you designed this for me. You made me wear this.
One of the flaws of this movie, I think, is that we don't get enough Diana Rigg. We don't get enough Diana Rigg interacting with Muppets because she's like serving cunt up and down this fucking thing.
Diana Rigg is
as she often does,
incredible in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like this scene with her and Miss Piggy because like she's talking shit to all the models. I like when she throws the ink from the inkwell on that one model, and then there's the way we're introduced to Diana Rigg is fucking insane because she's like on the phone like talking to Milan or some shit, and as she's doing that, the first thing we see her do is take out a comically large pair of shears and cut some of the model's hair to make the look right, which it's just hilarious that she like her arm is like her hand is out of frame and then it like whips into frame and she just has enormous shears and is like clip. But yeah, and then she she's in her office, she's doing very very important fashion mogul stuff, and Miss Piggy comes in and is like, "I want to be a model." I love Diana Rigg being like, "Well, that makes sense. It seems like the direction that we're heading." I love Miss Piggy showing her portfolio, and it's her in different outfits, but because she is a puppet, her face looks the same in every picture.
And she's describing all the different like expressions that she's doing.
Demure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fucking funny. And then she gets a job as Diana Rigg's secretary. And Frank Oz screams so high pitched. Frank Oz's performance as Miss Piggy is nothing short of masterwork. In every Muppet movie, but like anytime I watch this movie specifically, for whatever reason, I'm like, Frank Oz is fucking incredible as Miss Piggy. It's so crazy that the voice that he's doing matches the way that the puppet is emoting so well. And I think he's also doing the puppetry, so that makes sense, right? Because he's puppeteering and doing the voice. So it's all really one performance from him. But it's just like, it's a different type of acting that he is like doing like a 10 out of 10 performance at, you know? It's just like, you know, you don't see puppetry like this outside of the Muppets, which is why the Muppets got it bigger than any other, you know, version of this same thing.
Yeah. And for me, again, not counting like Treasure Island and Muppets from Space because I don't remember those as well. This is a really Miss Piggy centric film.
Yeah.
In comparison to Christmas Carol, where she's just basically playing Bob Cratchit's wife and is in the background for most of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the movie is hinging on you believing in Miss Piggy and believing that a human man wants to fuck her. But also like the whole the synchronized dance sequence later, where we have a motorized puppet that can kick and swim on its back, and then a puppet that we can manipulate underwater and above water, and like there's a lot of magic happening to make Miss Piggy believable.
Yeah.
Just to ride a motorcycle.
Yeah.
You know, and I think some of it, like the full body suits, don't quite work for me. But
yes, that's fair.
But a lot of what Frank Oz is doing and the way that the puppet has to emote and just the character design like from a character design perspective, Miss Piggy is really something special.
She's incredible.
I think even among all of the incredible puppet designs in this film.
Yes, she is a star. She is grace. She is elegance. And she's Lady Holiday's secretary. Then Kermit shows up. Kermit, Fozzie, and Gonzo show up to interview Lady Holiday about her stolen diamonds. But Lady Holiday has left. She went out on some business. So Miss Piggy's in her office, daydreaming about being a famous fashion model when Kermit walks in, and Kermit mistakes her for Lady Holiday, which is really the first act of this movie, is basically just this plot line where Kermit thinks that Miss Piggy is a famous fashion mogul, and Piggy just is like going with it. She's just like, oh yeah, okay, yes, that is me, yes. I like when she makes up a fake address when they set up their date.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's Highbrow Street. And then the payoff of that gag, that in this Muppet version of London, there is literally a Highbrow Street, is very fucking funny.
And the way that she has to wait for him to pick her up is to just loiter on John Cleese's lawn.
Yeah. So John Cleese is one of the cameos in this movie where when he shows up, you're like, holy shit, John Cleese is here. He's doing a pretty understated performance in this movie, and I really like it.
Well, yeah, the whole thing with him and his wife is they're doing, your classic, like, posh, upper crust British husband and wife small talk across their long dinner table.
Yes.
And he's selling it really well.
They're the wife's name is Dorcas, and at one Neville and Dorcas are their names.
Yeah.
And I really, really love the moment where John Cleese calls his wife Dorcas "my little armada" as a pet name. It's so fucking funny. And then he's talking about, like, she's like, am I boring you, Neville? And he's like, no, if I was bored, I'd go out and buy something, wouldn't I? Because they're, like, filthy rich. They're living in this huge mansion on Highbrow Street. And she's like, well, what would you buy? And he's like, oh, I don't know, some cheese or some quail's eggs or a jar of calf's foot jelly. It's so good. We skipped over the stepping out with a star number. I just realized that.
Do you have anything to say about it?
No, except for that when they go back to the Happiness Hotel for Kermit to get ready for his date, and that number happens, that's when we meet Beauregard. They get in the cab to go to the Happiness Hotel, and we meet Beauregard. And there's, like, a lot of really impressive stunt driving in this sequence, because the whole thing with Beauregard is he fucking can't drive for shit, and he's a cab driver, right? So the gag is like, oh, go straight, and he's like, okie dokie, and then he does like a huge U-turn or whatever.
How long have you lived in London? My whole life.
And I love them. I love them being like, "Oh, the Happiness Hotel's just up here on the right." And he's like, "What's your room number?" And then they're like, "We're on the second floor." And he's like, "I can only take you as far as the lobby." And then, they
Drives into the lobby
because they drive a car into this set, and it's very funny. But the thing that I wanted to mention, the thing that I had to back up to mention, is we mentioned the Swedish Chef earlier. One of my favorite Muppets. One of the jokes that got the biggest laughs out of me on this watch was like Beauregard drives the cab into the lobby of the Happiness Hotel, and then he asks, "How do I get out of here?" And Kermit's like, "I suggest you make a U-turn." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And instead of making a U-turn, he goes straight, because earlier when they said go straight, he was making U-turns. And he drives into the kitchen. And then the thing that really got me is then the Swedish Chef comes out of the kitchen with a huge pot of pasta with a steering wheel in it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hurdy-spurdy-purdy, hurdy-hurdy-purdy." And it's the funniest shit I've ever seen. I love the Swedish Chef.
Then the
I love
owner,
his human hands.
the owner is like steering wheel pasta again or something like that.
Oh yeah, it looks like it's steering wheel souffle for dinner. And Janice goes, "Again?" It's good shit.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Swedish Chef, because he has human hands, is maybe a Muppet human hybrid? He's like he's like half Muppet, half man. Like his parents are like, his mom's a Muppet and his dad's a human man.
During the war, they started experimenting.
Oh no!
They started.
They made him in a lab.
The humans started. He's an escaped lab creation.
He's not even Swedish. He just talks like that because he's a genetic mutant. Improperly developed vocal cords.
When the humans realized they needed to they needed to win, they were losing the battle to the Muppets. They started.
They tried to create Muppet human super soldiers. But he just wanted to cook. That was his passion. I love this headcanon that we have for the Swedish Chef.
Yeah.
I just love that guy has human hands.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Going back to John Cleese.
Yes.
Real quick. I'm not surprised that he's in this movie. He sort of seems like an actor who was born to act alongside Muppets.
Right.
I also really like when they get when Miss Piggy is showing Kermit the house because Kermit wants to see the house, and they go hide in the closet, and the couple both act completely nonplussed about them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Monty Python in this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel
the Muppet Show, I think, was probably influenced by Monty Python's Flying Circus. They were contemporaries to some extent, right? When you watch the Muppet Show, you're like, I feel like these guys are fans of Monty Python's Flying Circus, because it is a lot of like, and now for something completely different, ass gags, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot more dry humor in this, and a lot more silliness, which is like sort of a staple of Monty Python.
Right, it's the Monty Python magic where like everything's deadpan until like the most overtly ridiculous thing you've ever seen happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is very much like the vibe of these early Muppet movies. Yeah. I like when Miss Piggy's climbing the outside of their house too. And John Cleese is like, "There's a pig climbing the house." Yeah, and then I like how this whole sequence ends with when they're in the closet and John Cleese opens it with the fire poker, and then and he goes, "Oh, sorry," and then they ask him for a restaurant recommendation, and he gives them one, and then they just leave, and his wife walks up and is like, "Oh, who is that?" And he's like, "The pig from earlier. She was in here," or he misgenders Miss Piggy. He does say he. He's like, "He was in here with some kind of lizard." And she goes, "What do they want?" "Oh, they wanted a restaurant recommendation." It's very funny. And then they go to the restaurant. This whole sequence I also really love. Actually, on their way to the restaurant, we shouldn't skip over Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem's big number, Nightlife, which rips. I think this song fucking rocks. Happiness Hotel's my favorite number in the movie. But Nightlife, when they're driving to the restaurant on the van and they're performing on the top of the double decker, is just like so sick. It's good shit.
The van's also just another one of those like technical marvels.
Yeah,
Is that this is a real vehicle driving down the street
with a bunch of Muppets hanging off it.
with Muppets hanging off it that are all like animated and moving and articulated.
Yep. Yeah. I like that they when they're gonna get in the bus. I think it's the guy from the front desk at the Happiness Hotel is like, you can't sit in the back seat, it's condemned. So they're all hanging off the outside. Yeah.
Talking about the musical numbers in this movie in general, how do you feel about the music in this film?
I think the music is overall pretty good. I would say it's not the best in any Muppet movie. I think there are some numbers here like Happiness Hotel and even the Hey a Movie opening number that are like total like perfect bangers in my opinion. And then there's some stuff like the song when they're riding the bikes. I feel like the song doesn't do a ton for me, but the visuals kind of hold that whole sequence aloft, which I think are incredible. But there's peaks and valleys for me with the songs in this movie. I think they're all at least okay. I don't think there's any bad songs in this movie, but not all of them hit the way that like the Christmas Carol songs do, you know?
Yeah.
Or even the songs in the first Muppet movie, I feel like are stronger than in The Great Muppet Caper. I kind of feel like in this movie, the jokes are maybe some of the best in any Muppet movie. And the songs are kind of more like mid-tier in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in some of the other Muppet movies, you get better songs but less good jokes.
Which movie do you think has the best songs?
It's... that's hard. I hate to give it to one post-Jim Henson, but I think it might be Christmas Carol has the best songs. Because there's like, off the top of my head, there's like 4 songs in Christmas Carol that are like top 10 Muppet songs. Mm-hmm. Rainbow Connection is obviously the best Muppet song, and that's from the first Muppet movie. But the rest of the songs in that movie, like, they're all pretty solid, but like none of them quite reach those heights.
Okay.
Except for Rainbow Connection. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I would probably give it to Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like the songs were weaker here in comparison to Christmas Carol.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, nothing is bad, but I liked Hey a Movie. I liked Happiness Hotel. As the movie went on, I think the numbers stopped being as impressive to me and memorable.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as to say as like of the musicals that we've talked about on the show, this might have the weakest music.
Yeah, I mean, when you compare this to like The Prince of Egypt, Little Shop of Horrors, I think I don't think that I disagree with that. I think that The Great Muppet Caper is it's in my opinion, it's better as a comedy than it is as a musical.
Okay.
You know? But all that being said, I don't think any of the music is bad. I just think some of it's a little unmemorable,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Although I do really like when Nikki is singing Miss Piggy.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to the Miss Piggy dream sequence where Charles Grodin is serenading her in an opera voice. Don't worry about it. This podcast has been going This podcast has been going for an hour so far. We will be spending an additional hour on just that scene. I do love that joke.
That was a good joke.
You weren't even singing, you were dubbed. So Nightlife rips, and then they're at the restaurant. This is where we really get Charles Grodin for the first time.
Yeah.
I think he maybe popped up for like a second earlier, but like when we are introduced to Lady Holiday, Diana Rigg is talking about her like shit heel brother who sucks, and she says it's just plot development, it has to go somewhere, which is very funny. But Charles Grodin is here, and Charles Grodin, in my opinion, is one of the greatest human actor. This is one of the greatest human performances in a Muppet movie. Obviously, it's not Michael Caine, which is number one with a bullet. It's also maybe not quite Tim Curry in Treasure Island, which is also like hard to beat. But I really, really think Charles Grodin is fucking phenomenal in this movie.
I think he's a really, really strong performance for a Muppet movie. All of the humans in this movie are treating themselves not like Muppets, because really that's Tim Curry in Treasure Island.
Right.
But they are playing things a lot more comedically, a lot less straight-faced, and allowing themselves to be a little weird and Muppety.
Yeah.
Particularly Charles Grodin.
I love, one of my favorite things that he does in this performance is, so obviously, like, the person who has been stealing the jewels is Charles Grodin.
Yeah, they make it clear from the beginning.
Yes.
Basically, this character's introduction, where it's like, Diana Rigg, posh, upper crust, fashion mogul in London, England, and then her shit-heel brother who sounds like he should be a New York taxi cab driver.
Yes, her American brother, her inexplicably American brother, yeah. Who basically immediately she's like, oh, he's always been jealous of my wealth or whatever. Like, he's always coming around looking for a handout. It's like, okay, well, maybe you should, turn your eye inward for who might be stealing all these diamonds.
Yeah, maybe
Seems like you already know.
Maybe check on the fashion models that you've created this very, very hostile work environment for.
Really, what the moral of this movie is: be nice to your employees. Treat your employees well, because otherwise they'll pull a jewel heist on you. But yeah, one of my favorite things that he does in this performance is sometimes, in order to hide his villainy from Lady Holiday or whoever else, he pretends to act very innocent, and his acting in character is very bad. Like when in this scene, after the huge dance number, when the lights go out and the necklace gets stolen off of Lady Holiday, the lights come back on, and Charles Grodin is like, oh, I spilled ketchup on my cummerbund. Oh, like, it's just immediately like the hammiest, worst performance you've ever seen. And it's so funny to me that, like, the character of Nikki cannot act for shit. It's just, it got me every time he did that. Mm-hmm. And then later it happens again when they're framing Miss Piggy for stealing the necklace, where he's like, oh, Miss Piggy, how could you? Oh. It's so good. It's so good. I love him. It's also wild because I never put together until this watch that he's Dr. Hill from Rosemary's Baby. And I was like, wow, holy shit. He really does disappear into this role.
Okay.
Or that role. I don't know which one is less him in real life. Yeah. Other stuff in the restaurant scene. There's the big dance number with Miss Piggy. Kermit and Piggy are dancing on the dance floor, and then it just turns into one of two numbers in this movie, which is just about Charles Grodin falling in love with Miss Piggy. There's no fewer than two entire choreographed, full-on, like, Broadway dance numbers about Nikki having a boner for a pig puppet. This is the first one. It's love at first sight. And Kermit's also falling in love with her here. I like when she tap dances.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Charles Grodin, very, very aggressive towards Miss Piggy, too.
Yeah. Yeah. In a later scene, he is, like, almost sexually harassing her.
Yeah.
Not almost. He is sexually harassing her.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Leave her alone. She said no means no, man. I don't care if it's Frank Oz voicing a pig. You can't be doing that.
You can't be fucking puppets like that.
No. But he wants.
Oh
boy, does he want to. Though.
But I guess they don't have rights in this world.
Oh man.
I don't know.
Yeah, he's really horny for this pig.
Yeah. No second thought either. Just like,
it's love at first sight.
I'm gonna fuck that pig.
If I saw her tap dancing like that, I might, I like a woman with, thick calves, thick thighs. I get where he's coming from. I'm not saying I want to fuck Miss Piggy. I'm just saying I get it.
All right. I guess I can't judge you. I did.
You said you wanted to fuck the Bill Nye snake in Rango.
I did want to fuck a snake, and like, the first 15 episodes of our show.
I think I'm allowed to say that, like,
You're
I could
you're
see
right.
how a man could be attracted to Miss Piggy.
You're right.
It's, you know, when Kermit has her shoe after this like night, this date that they have at the restaurant, and then he like finds out that she wasn't who she said she was, and he's holding this really big glass slipper, like it's like one of her feet, is like as big as basically like his torso. I was just like, that's kind of hot. It's kind of hot having like the glass slipper from the woman who like lied to you and then left you with a million questions, and it's like a really big shoe.
I'm sorry. I let he who is without anthropomorphized fictional animal character fetish cast the first stone.
I'm just saying, if I was Kermit the Frog size, and if the proportions were
Are you
equivalent-
saying that you'd fuck Miss Piggy's feet?
No, I was just no. I was just gonna say, like, if the size difference between me and High Priestess Pod was the same as the size difference between Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy, I'd be all right with that.
I mean, I love a tall chick too.
Don't get me wrong. I like the proportions that she and I are in our real life, but you know, it wouldn't be a deal breaker if she was like real big.
Or a pig voiced by Frank Oz.
Yeah, you know.
All right. Cool.
Like when
I listeners, when I ask you to tell your friends about the show and to spread the word about the show at the end of the podcast, just remember that conversation we just had. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
Like when Fozzie's putting a bunch of sugar in his champagne, and he says if you put enough sugar in it, it tastes just like ginger ale. I also like Gonzo's hustle here at this upscale restaurant.
When he's trying to take pictures of people, including Jim Henson,
Yes.
and like sell them the photo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the Jim Henson director cameo too.
Mm-hmm.
And I also really like when he's taking a picture of, or he wants to take a picture of that guy with the significantly younger woman. And he's like, let me get a picture of you and your wife. And then the guy's like, my wife's not feeling very well right now. And he's like, well, shouldn't she be at home? And he's like, my wife is at home. And Gonzo's like, all right, I'm out of here. It's just, it's funny.
It's funny.
It's a funny joke. So then basically like this jewel heist happens at this restaurant, which then Kermit realizes the real Lady Holiday just had her necklace stolen.
The lights go out.
That pig wasn't Lady Holiday.
The lights go out, and Nikki takes the necklace off her neck and hands it to one of the fashion models.
To one of the models.
And then is like, oh no, the necklace.
Oh no! I also Diana Riggs' delivery.
Fucking like 100 in sneak. And like this guy's maxed out his stealth stats.
Again, I think that Lady Holiday just needs to like get better like observational skills, because I'm pretty sure she could put the mystery of who is stealing her jewels together very easily if she gave it any serious thought. Diana Riggs' delivery of IE is immaculate. I love when she screams IE, and then the maitre d' comes up and is like, excuse me, ma'am, did you just say IE? Yeah, her necklace has been stolen, and Miss Piggy dips because the jig is up. Kermit knows that she's not actually a fashion mogul, and he's left with only her big shoe to remember her by. That's when he goes this is when he goes to sit sadly by the lake.
Right, and Peter Falk shows up.
Holy fucking shit. So like, I last saw this movie as a child. I don't think I remembered that this was... I don't think I knew who Peter Falk was the last time I saw this movie. I had seen Monty Python as a kid, too, which, was probably inappropriate. My parents were probably showing me Flying Circus too early, because you see, like, tits and ass and shit in that show. But I knew John Cleese, right? I was like, oh, that's the guy from Monty Python. And I knew Peter Ustinov, who shows up later as the truck driver.
I didn't recognize him at all.
Oh, he's in some stuff. He's in Spartacus. He's the thing I mainly knew him from
because they do make a joke about.
It's a very brief cameo.
Yeah.
The main thing I knew him from is he was in a Disney movie, a live action Disney movie that I watched a lot as a kid called Blackbeard's Ghost, which is not particularly well known, but I watched it a bunch. And so by the time I saw The Great Muppet Caper, I had already seen Blackbeard's Ghost, or probably saw him around the same time, so I knew it was that guy, right? But I don't think I had any context for Peter Falk when I was watching this as a kid. So watching this today for the show, I was like, what? Holy fuck!
That was me too. It was just Peter Falk just walks into frame.
Just here to Falk us up. Welcome back to the show, Peter Falk. Last seen on our Mikey and Nikki episode, and now gracing us again on The Great Muppet Caper. What range on this guy?
Criterion Collection, Disney DVD.
I got a question for you, David.
Yeah.
Is the Peter Falk cameo the best scene in this movie?
I'm going to say no.
No? Okay.
I'm going to say no. I think the best scene in the movie is probably the Happiness Hotel number for me.
All right.
Or the bikes, because the bikes are just extremely impressive. The Peter Falk scene is nuts, though.
It's the best cameo of the movie.
It's the best cameo of the movie, definitely.
He's doing what you want from Peter Falk, but he's talking to a 2-foot-tall Muppet. Right. He's the one playing it serious. And not a lot of the other folks, like you've mentioned, not a lot of the other human actors are playing this serious. They're all kind of playing it Muppety. Peter Falk is playing it serious in this movie, where he's basically just like, yeah, I'm here doing my Peter Falk thing. What do you want from me? And I love fucking his monologue in this movie is one of the funniest parts of the entire movie to me. Where he comes up to Kermit all disconsolate on this park bench, and he's like, I know exactly what your problem is. You and your brother Bernie started a dry cleaning business, and he just goes off on this huge thing. It's so fucking good.
It's like, no, everything you said was wrong.
And then Peter Falk tries to sell him a watch.
And I think Peter's like, can I try again? And then Kermit's like, no, we have a movie that we have to do. And I did sort of feel like Kermit in that, where I was like, this is really funny. Can we get back to the movie?
Right. Which I like that these bits in this movie are self-aware enough to know when to end. Mm-hmm. And I like that he's also acknowledging that. He's being like, okay, it was really funny having Peter Falk deliver this monologue, but we gotta move on with this shit. We gotta keep this to under 100 minutes. Let's keep it moving. I do think the pacing of this movie is pretty good, by the way. I think this thing, for me at least, really flew by. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
yeah, I mean, it's a 90-minute Muppet movie. It's kind of hard to screw that up. I think.
Yeah. But it's very breezy. It just kind of, washes over you.
I did find the structure and the kind of loose narrative of this movie a little, I don't want to say difficult, but that wasn't something that I was expecting. Yeah. That wasn't what I was used to, because I had only really seen Brian Henson era Muppets. And getting used to Henson's anarchic comedic sensibilities took a little while.
Yeah.
And I was sort of wondering, would I like this movie better if they called it the Muppet Movie 2, as opposed to The Great Muppet Caper? Because that, and I saw it described, the Wikipedia article says it's a musical comedy heist film.
Right.
And there's a heist in it.
Right.
In the last 10 minutes.
Right.
And up until that point, there's just a lot of fucking around.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I'm here for that, but I was also sort of interested to see a Muppet heist.
To see a Muppet heist. Yeah.
And by this point, I sort of realized oh, that's not exactly what I'm going to get here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you are going to get here is Muppets riding bikes. because the next thing that happens after the Falk cameo is Piggy comes to find Kermit in the park, and they make up. I like that there's a meta like fourth wall break moment where Piggy and Kermit are fighting in character, and then they start fighting out of character, and it's just Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog. Not as their character, not as the character versions of themselves in the movie, having like a couple argument. and Kermit is like dressing her down for overacting, and she gets really hurt, and he has to apologize. That whole bit, I was just like, that is like, it's the galaxy brain shit, where it's like, not only are we gonna have it be like this goofy thing where like these this puppet frog and this puppet pig are making up, right? But it's like, then we're gonna have them get out of character and be the real puppet frog and puppet pig. And bring a bunch of like baggage from outside of the movie on screen. It's just, and then when you think about the fact that this was just Jim Henson with his hand in Kermit and Frank Oz with his hand in Miss Piggy doing silly voices at each other, it's just like, it's magical and it's genius, and I love it.
Yeah. And then a pig and a frog ride a bicycle, and then an entire band of Muppet freaks are riding bikes too. Holy shit! How do you know?
No, I probably should have looked it up, but I kind of like that I don't know how they did it, because I'm like, I don't know, fucking Kermit the Frog's riding a bicycle. He can do that. That guy's real. You know, like Kermit the Frog is a real guy who just knows how to ride a bike.
And Miss Piggy, is real too.
Yeah.
Sometimes she's a person in a costume.
Yeah.
But she can also just do that.
It's truly a technical marvel, this sequence. Like the song this is one of the songs that I think is kind of like, okay, it's not amazing. It's fine.
I don't even remember the song. I remember the bikes though.
Yeah. It's the one that's like, and couldn't we ride? Na 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 na. Right. But it's not, it's whatever.
Yeah.
But it is like such incredible like movie magic. These puppets riding these bikes. No clue how they did it. I assume it had to be like, I assume they're like mechanized somehow. I truly don't know. But it really makes for an arresting visual sequence. Like where you're just like, I don't know about you, but I was like glued to the screen during this whole number, because I was like, this is, first of all, it's filmed, it's shot beautifully. Kudos to Jim Henson, director.
Yes, this is a really, really well shot sequence. Like,
yeah.
It's like the sun streaming in through the trees and over the lake. It's all very beautiful.
Yeah, and like soft focus. It's like all very kind of like dreamlike. It kind of gives you like vibes of like watercolor paintings. And yeah, it's just like very like soothing and calming, which is a thing. That's the other mode of early Muppets. There are two modes of early Muppets. One is like the anarchic, boundary pushing, kind of zaniness. The other mode of early like Jim Henson era Muppets is like a feeling of like gentleness and calmness and like just pure distilled good and positivity, right? That is so transcendently beautiful that it makes me want to and occasionally actually weep. This movie does not have a Justus cry count. It's one of the few Muppet movies that won't. Because this movie is, I think not in a bad way, less focused on sentimentality and more focused on the comedy, which is not the case with all Muppet movies.
Yeah, and that wasn't something I was necessarily expecting, only having just recently seen Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
And Christmas Carol was full of that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if there is a moment in this movie that approaches that, I think it's this.
Yes. And it is kind of like a transcendently beautiful, like this just on its own, separated from the movie entirely, is just like a gorgeous little like art experiment in puppetry. And it's incredible that they pulled this off and that it looks so good and that it's one of those things that makes me be like, wow, art is amazing. And art takes so many forms. It can be like, how do we get this puppet frog to ride a bicycle? It doesn't need to always be the other kinds of great performances that we talk about on this podcast. It doesn't always need to be David Lynch. Sometimes it can be like, how do we get this frog to ride a bicycle? And when you do it and you nail it, it is as magical.
How do we get this frog to ride a bicycle?
Maybe Lynch was a bad example because I could totally see him doing that. I want the frog riding a bicycle. And I want ethereal 70s pop music playing over it. Make sure you shoot that in soft focus. It's a dream I had. I had a dream that a frog and a pig were riding a bicycle. And then Charles Grodin wanted to fuck the pig.
David Lynch would make a good Muppet movie, I think.
Yeah. I kind of am sad that he didn't direct Return of the Jedi, just because that's the closest we ever would have gotten to that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the closest we ever get to Lynch being like doing anything completely out of his wheelhouse and truly mainstream would have been it is Dune, but it would have been Return of the Jedi.
I think that movie would have been one of Lynch's worst films if he had made Return of the Jedi. I also think it would have been totally fascinating. Which I know, like, that's a cold take. Everybody wants to see Lynch's Return of the Jedi. Just seeing his take on Jabba's palace, would have loved that. Man, Jabba would have been even more of a sex freak.
Do you
think Jabba's fucking gross and horny and disgusting as is?
Yeah.
Imagine David Lynch's Jabba.
Have you seen David Lynch talking in an interview about what it was like to meet George Lucas?
No.
Where he's like, I went to meet George and he started talking and I got this headache. And then he showed me the Ewoks and the headache got worse. I
can just picture George Lucas being like, so you see, David, these are the Ewoks and they're little bear people that live on the forest moon of Endor. Endor itself is a gas giant, so it doesn't have a population, but the moons are habitable, and this one is populated by Ewoks. They're little guys who look a little bit like teddy bears, and I'm turning into Kermit the Frog. George Lucas is turning into Kermit the Frog.
Your Lucas often sort of strays into Kermit the Frog.
I can't. You have a way better Lucas than I do.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining him trying to explain all this shit and David Lynch being like, oh, this is like the scene in Eraserhead where Jack Nance has to talk to his girlfriend's family and he disassociates.
Yeah. I think Lynch's reason for not doing it was because not because George Lucas gave him a headache.
Yeah.
But it was like him entering someone else's work.
Right.
And it's sort of, and at the time at least, it seemed like he would have more freedom with Dune, which didn't actually end up being the case.
Yeah. And then he was like, never again. I'm never doing a studio for hire job as long as I live.
Dino, I know I burned all your money making Dune because you stuck a gun to my head for 3 years and made me make that fucking piece of shit movie. Can I have $10 million to make Blue Velvet? And get me that kid who played Paul Atreides. He was a good actor.
I like the cut of that kid's jib. And Dino De Laurentiis was, I don't know, sitting on a pile of money, smoking an enormous cigar. Being sure, whatever you want.
That was the thing. It was like, is that the budget for Blue Velvet was so small that Dino didn't even like. It was like 10th on Dino's checklist of like movies that he was paying attention to.
I piss that much money out every day. It's fine.
Yeah. Anyways, back to the Muppets. The
Muppets, which was not financed by Dino De Laurentiis. It'd be funny if it was.
I want to speak it to Kermit himself.
Put that frog in my office. Yeah. The next note I have after the bike scene is Charles Grodin sexually harassing Miss Piggy is so sinister, which we sort of already talked about. They're backstage at a fashion show.
He does want to fuck that pig and doesn't really want to take no for an answer.
He's like trying to feel her up in public. Well, not in public. It's a changing room at a fashion show, but there's still other people around. There's like all these models around. And it's like, oh, Nikki is like fucking sexually harassing this pig just blatantly in front of all these other people. He's like, I have to have you. You're driving me wild. Charles Grodin, it cannot be understated how horny this performance is. He wants to fuck this pig. I know we've said it, but it bears underlining.
It is exceptionally horny.
It's an incredibly horny performance.
And again, once we sell Muppets to the Disney Corporation, that ain't happening.
No, it never gets this horny again.
Yeah.
Tim Curry's a little horny for Miss Piggy and Muppet Treasure Island, but not at this level.
I think Tim Curry's just a little horny.
In
general.
You can't get the horny out of Tim Curry. Even as Pennywise, he's a little horny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the fashion show, and this is where they're gonna frame Charles Grodin and the models, Nikki and the models, are gonna frame Miss Piggy for the theft of the necklace at the restaurant, and to throw everybody off of their trail. So one of the models pretends to have an injury, and Miss Piggy has to go on for the runway show. This is where Statler and Waldorf have to synchronize their pacemakers and everything. I also like when Kermit and Fozzie are watching the fashion show, and Fozzie's like, wow, those are some fancy duds or whatever. And then Kermit's like responding with actual fashion criticism. Just very funny.
Yeah. Good use of Statler and Waldorf in this movie.
Yeah.
I think they work best as like a little seasoning.
Yeah, small
throughout.
doses.
Small doses really works with them.
Yes. And then Miss Piggy goes on, for the model who's injured. And it's this is where we get the fantasy sequence. And we were talking about the bikes and how it's a visual marvel, it's a technical marvel. I feel very similarly about this sequence. The difference is the bike sequence is amazing in a vacuum. This also fits into the actual plot of the movie. And it's I think the Peter Falk cameo for me is maybe the peak of the movie. It's the highest point of the movie. This is really close for me. It's like Happiness Hotel and this are sort of neck and neck, because the song is good. It's not Happiness Hotel good, but the visuals with the synchronized swimmers and all of the underwater photography of Miss Pig, like her hair billowing around her puppet pig face, and then when she like rises out of the pool on a geyser with sparklers on her head, and then pyrotechnics start shooting out from behind the geyser. There is one shot in this sequence where I was like, this is not even just like, separate this from anything Muppety, family friendly, whatever, just as an image. This is such fucking good filmmaking. It's such a spectacle. And it's crazy that they pull this off when the focal point is a puppet of a pig voiced by Frank Oz.
It is very crazy that they pulled this off when the focal point is a puppet, is a pig puppet. I'm not as impressed by this as you are. I'm also not as in love with this sequence. This was a point in the movie where I was like, okay, I'm having fun. Can we move on to something else? Yeah. Although I do love Charles Grodin going, Miss Piggy.
What colors, Miss Piggy?
And the little insert of him on screen with Kermit.
And then Kermit the Frog duetting this like opera singer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's so fucking funny. It's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
I wasn't as into it. I'm also just like, and I know it's why they did it, because synchronized swimming is so like over the top and overdone and like gaudy and ridiculous, and it works for Miss Piggy. I was also just not. I was just so. I was sort of felt like I was hallucinating during this part of the film.
I feel like that's the intended effect. Because what we learned is that Miss Piggy was hallucinating this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she jumps into the fountain because she was hallucinating the two men vying for her affections.
I was looking for a contact.
Yeah. And then Charles Grodin frames her for the necklace thing. He's basically like, oh, like she finds it in her clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And is like, oh, I don't think this belongs to me. And they're like, oh, like she stole the necklace or whatever, and they take her away and arrest her. And that's when we get the line like, you couldn't even sing, your voice was dubbed. Yeah, so Miss Piggy gets put in the slammer. Some of the stuff with her in prison is among my favorite stuff.
I do like it
in
when
the
she's like, yeah, that's what we call it in the joint.
Before we leave the fashion show, Gonzo does overhear the plan. He overhears Nikki and the models talking about how they're going to steal the baseball diamond, which is like the biggest diamond that Lady Holiday owns. And she says that she's going to put it in a museum and like not have it in her house anymore because she's afraid it's going to get stolen. So their plan is to steal it from the museum. But then Gonzo's explaining how he overheard this plan to Kermit and Fozzie, and he says that he was like in the changing room because he was doing a photographic essay on kneecaps.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, like, we've talked about some of the horniness in this movie, which is mostly Charles Grodin, but also Gonzo is fucking horny as hell in this
Again,
movie.
something's up with Gonzo.
He's got a kneecap fetish. The chicken thing is a running thing with his character. He's always horny for chickens. And in the beginning of the movie, he's taking pictures of this chicken and being like, "Smile, chickie babe." Yeah, I love Gonzo the Great in freak mode in this movie, where he's like walking and wandering around, taking pictures of all these models' knees. For whatever he's using those for, wallpapering his home or whatever. So then we are back at the Happiness Hotel, and everybody's trying to figure out how we're going to thwart this heist that Gonzo overheard. The planning of, and they're trying to motivate the whole band to like get together or whatever. And Kermit's like talking about how, there may be gunplay, there's a very serious chance that somebody might get killed, and everybody's like, no, not doing it. And then Fozzie does a 2-line inspirational speech that takes a lot out of him and gets everybody else back on board. And then we get the Murphy bed gag again.
Yeah. And the light bulb falls out.
I also really like when everybody's talking at once, and then Janice from Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, like Fozzie yells for everybody to be quiet, but Janice keeps talking, and she's like, "Mother, it's my life, okay? So if I want to live on the beach and walk around naked," and then she realizes nobody else is talking. It's a funny joke.
I didn't think it was that funny.
It's pretty funny.
That was one of the weaker jokes for me.
All right.
But I'm glad that you like it.
I liked it.
Is this the planning for the heist now?
Yeah, when they're doing their lists.
When they're intercutting between Nikki and the models.
Yeah.
And it's like harpoon gun, check. And then over in the Happiness Hotel, it's like whoopee cushion, still in the bus.
Yeah. Rubber chicken. Yeah. It's funny. I like the silly list.
That's funny. I like the silly lists.
Yeah.
Too.
And then we actually get our 10 minutes of heist in this movie. Well, before we get our 10 minutes of heist, we also have Kermit go and visit Miss Piggy in jail, pretending to be her lawyer, Rosenthal, which is very funny. And they kiss through the bars, and his fake mustache ends up on her face, and he has mesh marks on his face. I love this woman. She's not in the movie hardly at all, but I love the woman who's the prison guard who's got a Scottish accent. I just love her whole energy. I also love the two other inmates at the women's prison who only have one line in the movie, which is when in unison they yell, "Go for it!" to Miss Piggy, and then she pulls the iron bars of her cell apart.
Yes, that is great.
It's one of the most insane moments of this movie.
It breaks up by hanging on the back of a laundry service truck. that's called Big House.
Yeah.
Which was the scene with her and Kermit as Rosenthal, where she's talking about like, I'm in the big house, the slammer, the joint.
Time. He says that she's only been in there for 45 minutes, and she goes, "Time moves slower on the inside." Yeah. So everybody's going to the Mallory Gallery, where the baseball diamond is, and the Muppets show up at the Mallory Gallery, and they're trying to get in the gate, and I love that posted on the gate. There's a sign that says, "Mallory Gallery, don't try it. You'll be torn to shreds."
Yes. Yes. And then Kermit decides to have Animal try to chew through the gate.
Yes, and immediately all the security is like, "Hold on," and they all run away. And then they come back and pretend like they're delivering a pizza.
The pizza gag's very, very funny, especially when the guard is like, "I don't like pepperoni."
I ate pepperoni. Yeah, I love them in their little pizza delivery boy costumes too. Yeah, they're just like bullshitting with this guard while all the other Muppets sneak in behind him. It's very funny. And while they're doing this, like Charles Grodin and the models are like, using the harpoon gun and like climbing into the gallery or whatever. And so they
and then Piggy's because she's broken out.
Right.
She flags down a truck driver,
which is Peter Ustinov.
Yeah. And then throws him out of the truck and steals his truck like a GTA game.
And then Oscar the Grouch pops out of it because she throws him into a bunch of trash cans. And Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street, another Jim Henson and Frank Oz project, pops out. And he goes, "What are you doing here?" And Peter Ustinov asks him what he's doing there. And Oscar the Grouch goes, "A very brief cameo."
Yeah.
And Peter Ustinov turns directly toward the camera in extreme close-up and goes, "Me too." Which really makes me laugh every time.
That was very funny.
Yeah.
I just don't know who Peter Ustinov is. So
Yeah.
I was like, it's another British actor
One
that's
of
in
those
this movie.
guys. He's in Spartacus.
Yeah.
We're at the Mallory Gallery. The Muppets are coming in through the skylight. I love when there's like a security system on the skylight, and Dr. Bunsen Honeydew is like, "Oh, my assistant Beaker will handle it," or whatever, and Beaker like sticks a screwdriver in it, and his eyes light up and his head steams.
We don't get a lot of Honeydew and Beaker in this, and I really liked that joke.
Yeah, I really like that joke too. Once again, as in the Muppet Christmas Carol episode, I do have a note that just says Beaker and nothing else, which was that moment, because I fucking love Beaker.
Who's your favorite Muppet?
Traditionally, I have said Fozzie Bear. I love Fozzie Bear. I just think the mix between comedy and the heartfelt sincerity of the Muppets is best exemplified in the character of Fozzie Bear. So he's like always kind of been my favorite. Beaker's up there though. I don't know.
Okay.
It's probably still Fozzie, but like Beaker, I love Beaker. I love Gonzo. I love some of the like weird little freak ones. Like I love Crazy Harry. I love the Swedish Chef. I love New Zealand, the guy with the fish. But yeah, it's probably Fozzie.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite Muppet at this point?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
We'll get
you there.
I love Gonzo and Rizzo in Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
They're my favorite part of that movie.
Gonzo's also great in this movie.
He is good in this movie. There's just less of him.
Yeah. I like when he gets his nose stuck in the elevator. And then he's like to Fozzie, he's like, "You gotta try this. It's amazing."
But I don't think I'm well versed enough in all the Muppets media to have really a favorite at this point.
Fair enough. We'll get you there. Maybe next year.
Next year when we do Lost Highway immediately
followed by Muppets from Space.
Muppets Take Manhattan.
Muppets Take Manhattan. Yeah. They climb in through the skylight. This whole thing is so fun. Like, to me, the visual of all the Muppets...
visual of 15 Muppets looking down through the skylight is very funny.
Like when we're like over the shoulder of like the models and Nikki gathered around the baseball diamond, like trying to get it out of the case, and you just see over their shoulders there's just like 20 Muppets descending from the skylight. It's so funny. And then Fozzie Bear, like when they take it out of the case, Fozzie Bear just pops into frame upside down and goes, excuse me, I don't think that belongs to you. And then they play baseball with the baseball diamond. I think it's technically the climax of the movie, and it's a little anticlimactic because they just make it into a huge joke, a huge bit. But I
am okay with that.
I love it.
And then it does end with a motorcycle stunt driver in a pig costume jumping through a window. Then, which imagine being a motorcycle stunt driver and being like, I gotta get what jobs I can. Oh, the Great Muppet Caper. What do they need me to do? And you show up on set and you're like, all right, get in this Miss Piggy costume and get on this motorcycle and jump through that window.
Drive it through this stained glass window. That moment is awesome. I love it. And I like you can tell it's a stunt person on a motorcycle. And it like doesn't really matter to me. I'm like
that doesn't really matter. The bike stuff was a little jarring for me.
Yeah. I love when Miss Piggy is tackling Charles Grodin, and it's very clearly just him holding a totally inert Miss Piggy puppet and being like, "Oh no!" in slow motion. It's so funny. And Kermit hits him on the head.
Like he's Jeffrey Combs throwing that cat around in Reanimator.
Yes, yeah. You're like, "Oh no, it's attacking me."
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's just a puppet you're holding. I also like Charles Grodin threatening all these Muppets with a gun.
Yes. Yes, I was like, he's holding Kermit by gunpoint.
Yes. Yeah. Just being like, I will blow any of you little freaks away.
Meanwhile, Kermit's having flashbacks to the war.
Nikki's gonna drop
POW.
The hard really, it's a hate crime what he's doing to these Muppets.
Yeah.
But then Kermit bonks him on the head with the diamond. The day is saved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the cops show up. They arrest all the models. Oh, in the baseball sequences when Animal's running around going "Woman, woman" with all the models, which I really like.
Mm-hmm.
That's a recurring thing with Animal. They kind of stopped doing that after the Jim Henson years. You don't really get Animal being horny and chasing around women like he used to in the 70s and 80s. Once you get into the 90s and beyond, it's basically like, all right, we'll tone down.
He just shows
Animal's
up to play the
randiness.
drums.
Yeah. Oh man, speaking of Animal, one of my favorite jokes in this movie too is when at the Happiness Hotel when Animal has a drum solo and Kermit's like, "What's wrong with the drummer? He seems a little crazed." And Floyd Pepper from the Electric Mayhem goes, "He's just upset that he missed the Rembrandt exhibit at the National Gallery." And Animal corrects him and goes, "Renoir!" Because he's a patron of the arts. He's a fan of classical painters. Yeah, I don't know.
There's another horny exchange between Charles Grodin and a pig puppet.
Yes,
where he's like, "I always loved you," or whatever,
and she's basically like, I realized you were wrong for me, and Kermit is right, or whatever. Yeah.
Imagine getting cucked by Kermit the Frog.
I mean, it happens to the best of them.
Yeah,
that's a thing that happens multiple times in multiple Muppet movies.
Did I say that on the last one? I feel like I may have said that on the last episode.
Maybe, I don't know.
But
Kermit the Frog, I mean, he's got a certain, je ne sais quoi that the ladies love.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Muppets Take Manhattan, very, very small spoilers for Muppets Take Manhattan, the roles are reversed. Because in this one, it's a love triangle between Miss Piggy, a human man, and Kermit the Frog. In Muppets Take Manhattan, it's Kermit the Frog, a human woman, and Miss Piggy.
Oh.
So he has his day. Then it's more imagine being cucked by Miss Piggy, I guess.
Mm-hmm. that makes more sense to me.
You're right. Yeah.
That I could see that happening.
Maybe that's just because we're both, heterosexual men, so we can see the appeal of Miss Piggy. We've both agreed.
Yeah.
Mutually.
I will say, when I turned on this movie this morning, I did not expect this much pig fucking.
Yeah. I warned you this was the horny one.
Yeah. It's like the fucking first episode of Black Mirror over here with the amount of pig fucking.
Man, remember when that show started that way?
It's so rad that they did that.
Where they were just like, hey, we're brand new show, we're the new kid on the block. Our pilot episode is the Prime Minister of England getting balls deep in a pig.
I'm not super well versed in Black Mirror. I've seen probably like half of the show.
Yeah.
I petered out at some point.
Yeah, same. I probably watched 3 seasons or something.
Yeah.
And I gave up.
I remember everyone bracing me for that and being like, don't judge it based on the first episode. Whereas I'm like, no, the first episode is one of the best Black Mirror episodes.
I agree. I think it's one of the best episodes of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy that guy fucks that pig.
He really fucks that pig.
If I was him, I would simply have not fucked the pig. But, unless it was Miss Piggy.
Unless you were Charles Grodin and Miss Piggy.
Then I'd, if it was Miss Piggy, I'd be like, don't even need to
take her to dinner first.
Don't even need to blackmail me to fuck this pig.
All right, let's wrap this shit up.
Yeah, I don't know. They get thrown out of a plane again.
Yeah.
And then they're on parachutes. They give them parachutes this time because they're heroes.
Yes.
Instead of just throwing them out of the plane all willy-nilly.
Yes.
And then they're floating down on parachutes, singing a little song at the end here.
Over the credits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you're in, you're out. It's real quick. Light on plot, heavy on gags. And that's a great Muppet Caper.
That's the Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah. It was, as advertised, a caper. There were Muppets. But now it's time to figure out if it was great.
Yeah.
David, is The Great Muppet Caper the greatest movie ever made?
I feel so bad saying this about my first Jim Henson Muppets experience.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah. I mean, I picked a weird one, to be fair. Like, if this was the Muppet movie and you were saying no, I would be strangling you. But I picked a weird one, so I think that's defensible. Sorry, continue.
No, I liked this a lot. I had a good time with it. I wasn't expecting and wasn't ready for this being so heavy on gags and light on plot. And if anything, this has encouraged me to maybe go back and watch like the Muppet Show and get a sense of Henson's take on the Muppets before he passed away and the rights went to Disney and control went over to Brian Henson. Because I like these characters and I like this strange world and the magic that he's able to create with this stuff. It's just clear to me that I wasn't totally ready for what this movie had to offer. That all being said, it's still a riot. It's still full of great gags and funny jokes and dazzling puppetry. And it's a very, very enjoyable film, and I'm glad that we watched it. I just don't think it's the greatest movie ever made, especially in comparison to Muppet Christmas Carol.
That's fair.
I think this and Christmas Carol being the Muppet movies that I've seen the most recently, it was never gonna be this one. I think Christmas Carol is just so strong in comparison to this film.
Yeah.
At this point. But looking forward to watching more Henson Muppets, or even Jim Henson or Brian Henson Muppets in the future of this podcast.
Hell yeah.
With you. So, but yeah. No. Justus is the Great Muppet Caper, the greatest movie ever made.
David, believe it or not, even I, the huge Muppet fan of the two of us, was not totally sure about my verdict, either going into this movie or kind of while watching it at points, right? Where I was like, I don't know, I'm a little on the fence about this one. So, that being said, I'm giving this one a soft yes. So I'm going to say yes, the Great Muppet Caper is the greatest movie ever made, but I think your position is totally defensible, because I think at this point with the two Muppet movies that we've covered, we have covered the strongest post-Jim Henson Muppet movie, The Muppet Christmas Carol. I think it is, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion. I think most people feel this way. That's the best one after Jim Henson died. And we have now covered what I think is more or less universally regarded as the worst Henson era Muppet feature film, right? So I don't think it's crazy to say that this isn't the greatest movie ever made, even though I am giving it the soft yes. And I also think my personal ranking, I would put this below Christmas Carol. I think Muppet Christmas Carol is a better movie than this.
Mhm.
What I do love about it, and what gets it that soft yes, though, is I think this movie is one of the funniest, if not the funniest, Muppet movie. I think this movie is like, because it's so light on plot and doesn't have some of that like kind of hallmark Muppet sentimentality. It's pretty much that stuff. The sappiness is pretty much absent from this movie, which I do miss, which is why it's a soft yes and not a hard yes, right? But I think because they kind of took all that stuff out and made the plot really loose and light, it leaves so much room in this like 90 minutes for just gag after gag after gag. It really is kind of like a joke every minute. And so many of them are so funny that I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if the Muppets have ever been funnier than this. And I was laughing my fucking ass off. I think this movie's hilarious. I also think, like, as we talked about, I think it's a technical marvel. And I think that Jim Henson, as a director, directs the shit out of this movie. Like, I think it's very well directed. I think the shots are very well composed. I think a lot of the cinematography is amazing. Some of the camera movements are like, some of the camera moves where they're like panning on one of the Muppets' bodies as they're moving. You're just like, how the fuck did they do this? Because this is one continuous shot, and I'm seeing their face articulating, and then I'm seeing their feet moving or whatever. And it's just like, it's just such movie magic. And ultimately, I kind of think that is the biggest draw for me for this Jim Henson era of the Muppets is the magic of it. That sort of intangible quality that all of the Jim Henson era Muppet stuff has, where it's just like, these don't even feel like puppets that are being operated. They just feel like fully realized, like they feel like actors, you know? And I feel like when you get into the Brian Henson era, you do still have some of that, but I just don't feel like it comes across quite as strong on screen after Jim Henson's death. I kind of feel like he was the biggest behind the camera force for creating that feeling. And any movie that has that feeling, I just severely fuck with. So like, I mean, I guess spoiler alert for my verdict for future Jim Henson era Muppet films that we'll cover, because if I said this was the worst one and I'm giving it a yes, you know, it's kind of reduces some of the suspense. But like, yeah. Great Muppet Caper is the greatest.
Yeah, you didn't mandate that we're doing one Muppet movie a year because
I hate them.
Because you hate the fucking Muppets. What do you have? What is your favorite?
My favorite Muppet movie?
Favorite Muppet movie.
The Muppet movie from 1979.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the first one, best one.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how you feel about that one when we get to it.
Yeah.
If you don't cry, you know, I'll understand, but also it means you have no soul. So, but I would say I would probably put Christmas Carol second.
Okay.
So, you know, some of the post Jim Henson stuff still really hits for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Muppet movie is my number one.
Okay.
That's all the Muppets for now.
Yeah, that's all the Muppets for this year.
But it's not our only only family film for the time being.
No, we're returning to a nostalgic property from my childhood in particular. I don't know about the film. We'll talk about the film.
Yeah.
We're having another guest return to the show. It's our friend Hannah, and she has chosen...
A guest is not returning to the show. Her first appearance.
Her first appearance, but
Yes.
we're having a guest on the show again, I
Yes.
guess. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
But it sounded stupid. Our friend Hannah's going to be on the show, and she has decided that we're going to watch the live-action film Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed.
Yep. So that'll be I really don't know what to expect.
That'll
with
be
this one.
interesting.
I don't know what to expect with this one, partially because I haven't seen Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed in like 2 decades, and also partially because our guest, Hannah, is who I love dearly. And Hannah, I know you probably are listening. I love you dearly. You're also one of the most chaotic people I know. So I'm really not sure how any of this is going to go. But tune in next week to find out. It should be a fun time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
We'll see how it goes.
Yep. And regardless, it'll be a delight to talk to Hannah.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Hannah in forever, so
same.
it'll be great to talk to her again.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show and supporting us. We appreciate it. Please share the show with your friends and leave us a review and spread the word.
Yep.
We love you all so much. Join us next week for Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. And until then, as always, later, dipshits!
Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.